Hey, welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, then welcome. Today, I'll be sharing my April wrap-up. I'm uploading this a little later than I would have wanted to. Last week, I had hoped to put this video up, but I had some shifts rescheduled for my work that interfered with my filming time. I'm pretty sure I'll be uploading this video on the 7th. We're still early in May, so it's okay. As for how my reading in April went, the first 3 weeks of April went amazing in terms of reading. I was legit thinking this was going to be my best reading month I have ever had, just in terms of the quality of the books I was reading. All the books I was reading was so freaking good. I was like, this is going to be the best reading month that I have ever had in my entire life. Like, I'm giving so many books 5-star reads. Like, it's going great. But then I think it was the last week of April, I encountered a book that I gave 2 stars. And I was like, oh, okay, now this is not the best reading month I have ever had. That was disappointing because I was doing so well. I was loving everything I was reading. But you know, there's always going to be that one book that could ruin it all. And I will talk about that book in this video, of course. But other than that, April was still such a great reading month for me. Also, another interesting fact about my reading month for April, all the books I read were physical books that I owned, which I don't know what that says about me. I have a feeling that's saying that I am buying too many books, which I probably am, but I thought that was also very interesting. Oh, and also I read 8 books this month, which has been the average amount of books that I have been reading per month, so that's pretty good for me. Alright, I know this is going to be a long video because all my wrap-ups are, so sit tight, maybe grab a snack, maybe grab a drink, just relax because we'll be here for a while. So I have 2 books to show here. I only read the sequel to this series in April, but I only touched on my thoughts on the first book in March because I wanted to talk about the series as a whole once I finished the second book. So I'm going to talk about this duology as a whole, and that is the Cat and Mouse Duet. The first book is Haunting Adeline, and these are by H.D. Carlton. So I read Haunting Adeline at the end of March, but in the beginning of April, I read Hunting Adeline, which is the sequel, and this duology is quite something. I am going to say outright that I really enjoyed this duology. Maybe a controversial take, but I really liked it. Like, it was my taste exactly. So I have a lot to say about this series. So this duology follows Adeline, who moves into her late grandmother's manor. Shortly after moving in, she realizes that she is being watched and followed by a man that she instantly wants to resist. But this man turns out to be the only one that can protect her from people who are targeting her. And once Adeline sees and figures out who he is entirely, she finds that she cannot resist him. This is, without a doubt, the darkest romance I have ever read. So for that reason, please be aware before going into this duology. There are trigger warnings at the beginning of both books, which is really good. This series just has a lot of really heavy subjects in it. I really did not expect to love this duology as much as I did because it is a stalker romance. So I expected it to be cheesy, cringe, hard for me to buy, because usually it can be hard for me to like buy into a romance where one person is stalking the other, because like, how can that be romantic? But these 2 characters are so interesting with the way that they handle the situation that they are in that it makes room for a lot of development for their individual characters, and I loved that. First, we have Adeline, who is an author who is living in her late grandmother's manor that she inherited after her grandma died. A lot of her friends and family judge her for living in this manor because it's an old house. It's very creepy. It has a lot of like really dark history surrounding it, so her family is like, why are you moving in there? But she really wants to. She's someone who really loves creepy stuff, so that's one of the reasons. And I love that she has such agency to not let others sway her away from moving into this house. She's able to really think on her own. She's a little freaky. She's a little bit of a freak because fear actually turns her on. And that's why she gets along with Zaid, her stalker, so well, because Zaid's advances towards her actually arouse her more than they do scare her. As she starts to let Zaid in more, she becomes influenced by his immoral tendencies. And I loved seeing the battle she had with trying to keep her moral ground while she's falling for such a morally gray guy. And she really starts to wonder what that says about her since she is falling for him. And it takes a while for her to accept that her morals might not be as upstanding as she always thought they were. And her journey with like grappling with that fact made her go through so much development. And at the end of Hunting Adeline, she's like a completely different person. Even though she's a lot more morally gray, her morals are not as upstanding as they were in the first book. It still caused her to go through so much development, which I really enjoyed seeing. Zaid is the definition of morally gray. Yes, he stalks Adeline, which I would never condone that, but he's super interesting because he's a vigilante who takes down human trafficking ring, which makes him so contradictory to his morals. But he does explain that he makes up his own rules and his own morals, and I just went along with it. I'm like, okay, dude, you are super contradictory, but I can kind of see what you're saying. It's the confusion that surrounds his character that made him super fascinating to me. The romance between Adeline and Zaid is super hard to get on board with at first because he is the one who is stalking her. But the push and pull of the relationship is so fascinating to watch because Adeline really wants to push him away because she doesn't want to get involved with someone who is stalking her and doing like really questionable things with her, but she finds out that she just can't resist him. From the start, Zaid wanted Adeline to see him for the morally gray guy he is because he wanted her to love him despite the fact that he had these bad qualities about him that were very questionable and were morally wrong. He's always accepted the fact that this is just who he is, so he wanted Adeline to accept that from the start, and that's why he didn't try to like hide who he was. He just really wanted her to accept him for who he was entirely. And did Adeline do that? She kind of did. And even though everything that Zaid does is very, very questionable, I will give him this. In the second book, Adeline goes through something very traumatic, and the way that Zaid handled it was very surprising. And I won't say what happens to Adeline because you should find out for yourself, but she goes through something that was like super, super, super traumatic. And Zaid could have easily done something to make that trauma so much worse, but he was actually really understanding about what she was going through and gave her the space that she needed to like heal from it without him like imposing on her and doing the exact thing that had traumatized her. I'm being very vague about that because I don't want to give away anything, but I just like the way that Zaid handled her trauma and helped her through it. It was something that I did not expect him to do, but he did it, and he won some points from me for that. These books are definitely extremely spicy, but the spice was everything. I loved every single spice scene that was in this one, although I will say the very first spice scene had me very much questioning what exactly was going on here, because it's very I guess the word would be problematic. It was kind of hard to watch, but every single spice scene after that was very, very good. And I specifically love the banter between these two during those scenes. Like the dialogue between them is just everything. These books are super long, which initially put me off because I feel like with romances, they should never be over 400 pages because that gives me a sign that there will be a lot of slow parts. But honestly, there was not a single moment in these books where I was bored. I was always gripped on what was going on, and that's because there are actually 3 plot lines going on throughout these books, and because there's so much going on, it makes sense that these books would be as long as they are. And because there was 3 very interesting plot lines going on, it made it so that there was never a dull moment in these books. Like, we're following the romance, we're following Zaid's vigilante adventure, and there's also a mystery regarding Adeline's grandma that she is trying to unravel that we're following. So you get a little bit of a mystery aspect in this book that was super interesting. And the atmosphere of these books was really, really cool. It has very much creepy vibes, especially when we're in Adeline's manor, because the manor is very old and ancient and it's like low-key haunted. There's a lot of hints that it's haunted, so it has like that very spooky vibe. So yeah, I love these. I'm gonna say it, I'm one of the folks that love these. They're definitely not for everyone, for sure, but if you are into dark romances, like, do pick them up. Just again, be cautious of all the triggers that are in these books. Look them up because there are so many of them, especially with the second book. The first half of this book is so heavy. I had never been through what Adeline has been through, thank God, but it was hard for even me to read. I had to put this book down a lot of times just to take a break, just because it was getting so dark. So just be aware of that. But yeah, they're great. I gave both of these 5 stars. Okay, I never thought I'd be saying this in the year of 2025, but I have re-entered my Hunger Games phase. My Hunger Games obsessed phase that I had when I was in middle school, because I read The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes and Sunrise on the Reaping in April. And oh my God, these books were so good, which I was not expecting them to be as good as they were, because it was going to take a lot to live up to the original trilogy, but they delivered. And I am obsessed with these. We're going to talk about The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes first. I did not read this book when it first came out for whatever reason. I just did not read it. Did not read it until April, which is absurd, but I'm glad I finally did. And I'm going to trust that at least most of y'all know the Hunger Games series, so I'm not going to explain the original trilogy. I'll just explain what is in these books, just so that we can save time. So in The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, we are following President Snow when he was a teenager and his whole backstory. So this takes place during the 10th Hunger Games, where Coriolanus has been chosen to be a mentor for one of the tributes going into the Hunger Games. During the war, his family's business fell apart, so he's hoping that if he succeeds as a mentor, that will give him a leg up to enter university and reestablish the Snow family name. He's paired up with District 12 tribute Lucy Gray, who is a traveling musician that got confined to District 12 during the war. Coriolanus hopes to use her talent as a musician in order to gain her sponsors for the Hunger Games, which he succeeds at, and he actually ends up falling in love with her in the process. And we also see how Snow contributed to the development of the game, and we also find out what were the sources that contributed to Coriolanus's twisted worldview that turned him into the dictator that we know that he is in the original trilogy. So I know I said I don't know why I put off reading this book for so long, but I actually kind of do know the reason why. And the reason why is that when this book came out, it got a lot of negative reviews, and that really scared me from picking it up, just because, like I said, I didn't want it to taint my love for the Hunger Games, the original trilogy, and I was afraid that if I did read this, then it would. So I kept putting it off and putting it off until I read it this past month. And now after reading it, I can say that I do not... We're about to get ranty. I do not understand why this book has so many negative reviews. I am so confused. And after reading negative reviews on this book that are on Goodreads, it seems like the opinion of a lot of the negative reviews is that they don't like this book because it is about President Snow, who is a character that you're not supposed to like because he's the villain. So why would a book about him be necessary? And I just don't get that take, because aren't villains like some of the most interesting characters to read about? At least they are for me. I love villain origin stories and figuring out why a villain does what he does. Villains are such interesting characters because they think so differently from we do, and I'm always interested in discovering why they think the way they do. And this book does that. It shows how Snow ended up the way he did, and so for that reason he was a very interesting character to read about, in my opinion. So I don't get the opinion of people who are like, why does this book exist? It was not necessary. It was absolutely necessary. What are y'all talking about? I don't get that. I do not get it. And I think this book does a great job at making it so that Snow is still not an easy person to sympathize for, because it's easy to chalk up a villain being a villain just because they have a tragic backstory, which Snow does. Like, he has a very tragic backstory, but from the very start of his story, he is shown to be a bad guy who is only motivated by power and wants to gain power. He's never shown in a great light at all. And it's the influences influences around him that fuel his ego and validate his twisted views on humanity that push him into the villain that we know in the original trilogy. The introduction of Lucy Gray was very influential on Snow's character because his love for her becomes a distraction towards his end goal, and Lucy Gray actually becomes everything that Snow is against because she wishes to rebel against the Capitol, and anyone who rebels against the Capitol is on Snow's radar, so his trust for her really starts to dwindle. And besides Snow's development that we see in this book, the reason why I think this book is so necessary is because it gives so much context to what happens in the original trilogy and expands on this world so much. The Hunger Games is still a very new concept at the time period that we follow in this book. And it was interesting how so many people, not just from the districts, but also the Capitol, were actually still against the idea of the Hunger Games. And they saw it as morbid, whereas in the original trilogy, the Capitol has embraced the Hunger Games. And that's likely because that is all they've known. Because the Hunger Games is still so new in this book, all of the characters, all of the people that we're following didn't grow up with it. So it's a very new concept. And so they are not desensitized to the idea of the Hunger Games like the characters from the original trilogy. We also find out exactly who created the Hunger Games, which was so cool, and how it was proposed. And probably most fascinating of all, we discover why the Hunger Games became a thing in the first place. We're told in the original trilogy that the reason why the Hunger Games became a thing is because it was a way for the Capitol to punish the districts, because the districts started the war in the first place. But it's revealed in this book that the games are a way to show everyone what humans are capable of doing when it comes to violence, and that our supposed nature is to kill and defend ourselves, which is why the Capitol has taken over in order to enforce order on society. And getting down to the nitty-gritty of why the Hunger Games had to happen was, without a doubt, the most interesting part about this book. I just loved it. I think this will definitely be one of the most surprising reads of the year, just because I did not expect to love it as much as I did. For one, like everyone, President Snow is not my most favorite character in this series whatsoever, but he was just so fascinating to read about. I found every single aspect of his character so interesting. He's definitely a hard person to read about just because of who he is, but I really enjoyed following him, and I really, really loved getting inside his head. Right after finishing this book, immediately, within like a minute after finishing this, I turned on the movie because I also had not seen the movie yet, which is crazy. So I turned it on right after, and the movie was really good, but I do have to say I think the book is better just because we're able to get into more of Snow's head in the book, whereas in the movie, not every single thought that goes into his head is revealed because movie format just does not work with that kind of storytelling style that you can get in books. But the movie was still really, really solid and good, and I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. And after that, I went into Sunrise on the Reaping, and have I still recovered from reading this book? No, I have not. I have not. I'm still thinking about it. I'm still thinking about how much it absolutely broke my heart. This was definitely a different, like a whole new tonal shift from Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. It's a lot sadder. Ballad will make you angry. Sunrise on the Reaping will make you cry. That's the difference. This book actually came out in March, so I read it very shortly after it came out. This time I was not going to wait on another Hunger Games release, so I got like right into it. And in this book, we're following Hamish, which is a character that I always wanted to get into the head of and find out more about him, so I was super excited to read this book. And so in this, we're reading about the 50th Hunger Games, and the 50th Hunger Games was actually the second quarter quell, and the whole theme of this quarter quell is that double the amount of tributes were reaped into these games. So there's like double the stakes going on. Going into this book, you just know it's going to be sad because of how we know Hamish is in the original trilogy, because he is a character who has alcoholism and who lives alone and is always like very sad and angry all the time. I mean, come on, you just know it's going to be heartbreaking. And although I could predict how this book was going to end just because of what I know of Haymitch in the original trilogy, it certainly did not make the journey of reading this book any less heartbreaking. I cried ugly tears so many times while reading this, especially during the epilogue. The epilogue. If you know, you know, like, I'm tearing up just thinking about it. And what I loved about this book is we actually find out that Haymitch was one of the ones to kickstart the second rebellion. So he's very similar to Katniss in that way, which is super interesting because in the Hunger Games, in the original trilogy, he's constantly discouraging Katniss from going against the Capitol. And in the end of this book, you figure out the reason why he does that. But he actually tried to start a rebellion while he was a tribute in the game. And obviously, that didn't work out. So because he tried to start a rebellion and it failed, his attempts failed, you can just imagine how proud he is of Katniss in Mockingjay at the end of the trilogy when she succeeds with taking down the Capitol. Oh, he just had to feel so proud of her. A lot of the characters that we know of in the original trilogy show up in this book, and their characters are further fleshed out in this one. This book, like Ballad, further gives context to things that happen in the original trilogy, which I love. We also meet Haymitch's fellow District 12 tributes, which I really enjoyed getting to know each and every one of them. And interestingly enough, one of the District 12 tributes in this book, Maisie, she was name dropped in Catching Fire, and I completely forgot about that. I have not read the original trilogy in so long, so that's probably why. But she was so awesome. She's so spunky. She's so sassy. She's a fashion enthusiast who is constantly like roasting other people for their fashion choices. Like, she is hilarious. In that way, she's like a little mean, but she has this very subtle kindness to her that gets revealed with her character that I really enjoyed seeing. Haymitch also does have a love interest in this book who I really enjoyed reading about. There's just so many things that are unraveled and revealed about his character that I just loved reading about. Like, I liked him enough in the original trilogy, but this book made me love him even more. I cannot wait for the movie adaptation. I think it comes out November of 2026, which is way too far away. Like, are you kidding me? It's incredible how after reading Ballad, I was able to watch the movie right away because it had already been out, but I actually have to wait to watch the adaptation of Sunrise on the Reaping, which makes me really sad, but I will be sad when it comes out. And I also gave this one 5 out of 5 stars. Next, I picked up my Book of the Month book release for April, and that was Passion Project by London Sperry. I was actually really looking forward to going into this book after how heartbreaking Sunrise on the Reaping was. I just needed something a lot lighter, a lot fluffier, and so I thought this was the perfect book to pick up because this book was supposed to give rom-com vibes, which it absolutely does. This book just had all the happy vibes and I enjoyed it so much. So in this one, we're following Bennett, whose boyfriend has recently passed away. I know I just said like this book gives happy vibes, but already with that opening summary statement, you wouldn't think so, huh? I just realized that. And so to honor him, she moves to New York, where he always wanted the two of them to live together. And she's hoping to find her calling in New York, but her grief and anxiety has left her with no motivation to find it. And so she runs into Henry after standing him up for a date. And after Henry learns about her situation, he proposes that they meet up once a week to try something new together in New York so that they can find what her passion is, and they decide to call this their passion project. In the process of them going on these adventures together, Bennett is falling in love with Henry, but she's struggling to let him in while she's still mourning the death of her boyfriend. Bennett was a very easy character for me to sympathize with because of her struggles with grief and anxiety. Her grief has caused her to push people away because her constant sadness makes her feel absolutely miserable, and she figures that she must be a miserable person to be around if she feels this way about herself. And I feel like that's such an accurate representation of grief. As a very anxious person myself, the representation of her experiences with anxiety were extremely relatable. And I loved her journey with finding out that she shouldn't let her anxiety hold her back from doing new experiences and opening herself up to new situations and opportunities for herself, as well as her journey with letting herself open up to love and friendship, which is something that she figures out that she actually needed and just pushed away because of her grief, which is understandable, but it's something that she also needs. It's something everyone needs in order to survive. And I loved watching her just open herself up to more relationships as well and just letting people in more. Her relationship with Henry was the definition of wholesome and adorable. I loved how patient Henry was with Bennett while she was in her low moments, but he was also there to push her out of her comfort zone, to try new experiences that gave her life more of a purpose. Their dialogue together was so playful, and as individuals, they are so funny. So for that reason, they had some of the most hilarious conversations while they were talking with each other. And there's not a lot of spice in this romance because it is more of like a rom-com, but the spice that was in this, I loved so much. I thought it was written so well. And the reason the spice works so well is because there was such a build up to it. This romance is very much a slow burn. So when it got to those points where they were like really intimate with each other, oh my God, I was like on the verge of screaming. I was rooting for them so hard in those moments. I was feeling all the feels. I just loved it. So I love this book so much that initially I did give it 5 stars. However, a few days after finishing this, I thought about this book more and realized, you know what? There's just one thing about this book that is bothering me too much that I can't give it 5 stars. And the reason why I knocked a star off is because there are some moments of miscommunication that happen in this book, and the miscommunication trope is my most hated trope of all time. This is a trope that is more forgivable in YA because teenagers are not great at communicating. That's just a fact. Most teenagers are not great at talking to each other, but I feel like when you get to be an adult, you should be better at communicating. There is no excuse for not talking to each other, and there were a few moments where Henry and Bennett would just allow misunderstandings to happen, and I just like, you're too old. You are too old to not be talking to each other and working this out. It would be so easy to solve this conflict if you would just talk. And there was a few instances where they didn't do that, and it was very, very frustrating to me. Like, I understand that miscommunication is a form of conflict. Like, okay, but couldn't you find any other way to cause conflict that doesn't have to do with the characters not talking to each other? I just feel like it's a little bit of a lazy way to cause conflict in your plot, and I'm just not a fan of that. And Bennett also does something to Henry in like the 3rd act that was very inconsiderate of his feelings, and it was kind of baffling that she would do that because at this point she was really in love with him. So I'm like, why would you do this to him? It was something that was very selfish of her, and I know she has so much trauma and that this was a response to trauma, but still, like, you don't do that to someone you care about. So I also did not like that. But other than the miscommunication trope, which I don't like, I loved everything else about this book. I loved the romance overall. The writing in this book was also really, really well done. I didn't mention yet, but this is a debut novel. This is London Sperry's first book that just came out, and for this being a debut novel, it was really, really solid. That's what makes this very impressive, that it's a debut. Like, props to the author. This was really well done. I also got to say, like, Henry was so my type. That's why he was so enjoyable to read about. Oh my God, he's the cutest cinnamon roll guy I have ever read about. I loved him so much. So yeah, there was just a lot of great things about this book. If London puts out any more books in the future, I will be picking them up. I'm really curious to see how much she grows from this one. And I gave this one, like I said, 4 out of 5 stars. I'm pretty sure the next book that I'm going to be talking about is my favorite book that I read this month. Again, I read so many great books this month that it's hard to choose, but this book kind of changed my life. It was so freaking good. And that is Phantasma by Kaylee Smith. I had been saying how much I wanted to pick up this book for so long, and I finally did. This book had just been calling to me. The premise of it sounded so freaking good. Like, my hopes for it were so high. And after reading this, I am so relieved that my expectations were met and then some with this book. It was amazing. So in this, we're following Ophelia, whose sister has entered into Phantasma, which is this competition that takes place in this manor in New Orleans, where there are 9 trials that are meant to represent the 9 circles of hell. Players enter to compete in these trials, and the last person at the end of the last trial becomes the winner of Phantasma. And their prize is to have one of their biggest wishes fulfilled. The only way to leave Phantasma is to either forfeit from the game or die during one of the trials. Ophelia's sister Genevieve enters Phantasma because their house is about to be taken from them due to unpaid bills. So Genevieve is hoping that her prize, should she win, will help them keep their house. Ophelia enters Phantasma in order to find her sister, but while she's there, she meets Blackwell, who is a phantom that is stuck in the game. And Blackwell bargains with Ophelia that if she helps him get out of the game, he will help her through the trials to get to her sister. But one of the biggest rules of Phantasma is to not fall in love during the game, or else you will face a curse, and Ophelia is falling in love with Blackwell, so the stakes are pretty high. I really loved how atmospheric this book was. Kaylee Smith wrote in a way where I could easily picture the environment that we were in, and I honestly haven't felt this immersed in a world since I read the A Court of Thorns and Roses series. And that is saying a lot because I love that series. And one of the reasons I love that series is because the world is so vivid and expansive and just whimsical and interesting. And this book had all those qualities as well. Like, I was so immersed in this book. I could picture everything that was going on because this book gives so much detail to the setting. This book is so spooky. It's described as a dark fantasy romance, and I think that just makes for such a unique fantasy book. And because this book has such spooky vibes, it is the perfect one to read during the fall. And it's quite a shame that I didn't read this during the fall. Like, we're in spring right now, so I wish I would have read it during the fall. But still, that did not take away my enjoyment that I got from this book. Ophelia was such a great character to follow, and she's actually a necromancer who inherited her power from her mother after her mother died, which is a huge weight for her to carry because as the oldest daughter, she feels that it is her responsibility to carry on the family's legacy with their necromancy business. And for that reason, she's kept herself isolated because her line of work makes her very different, and it makes it so that others find it really hard to understand her. And I really felt for her being the oldest child and having feeling like there's so many expectations that are placed on her, because I am the oldest child. Not only am I the oldest sibling because I have one younger brother, I'm the oldest child in my entire family. And not only that, I've always been the oldest child among all of my friends. I've always been the oldest one. So as an oldest child in the family, I know firsthand how it can really feel like there's just so many expectations that are placed on you that you feel like you have to fulfill because you're the oldest child. So you should be setting the example for the younger children. And that's something I had always felt a lot growing up. So I really related to Ophelia because of that. And she also struggles with OCD. And this is an own voices aspect of the story. Kaylee Smith also struggles with OCD. And she states, I believe she made an author's note at the end of this book, where she states that a lot of the experiences that Ophelia faces with OCD is very reflective of her experiences that she has with this disorder. And so I really loved how we got an own voices representation of OCD in this book. And Blackwell, I could go on and on about this guy. Oh my god. This man gives such Rhysand vibe, who is from A Court of Thorns and Roses. I'm sure a lot of you know. He is so much like him in personality, and that's probably why I love him so much, because I love Rhysand. Like, they are so similar, and so that's why I was vibing with Blackwell so much. He's very interesting because he's cursed to have not remembered his life before he was trapped inside Phantasma, and he's stuck in this mansion. Like, he cannot get out of it, so his life is very lonely. And that's what made Ophelia's relationship so meaningful, because they're two very lonely souls who come together and fill a void that they so desperately needed to be filled. These two have such a fun, caring, affectionate romance, and it was wild because I did not realize how insta-love this romance actually is because these two just felt so natural together. This book makes you aware of the passing days that are happening in Phantasma, and so I think it had gotten to like day 4. And at that point I realized, wait, Ophelia and Blackwell have only known each other for 4 days? And they're already feeling so much for each other, and I didn't even realize it. Like, I didn't even realize that these two were having insta-love, or pretty much insta-lust, more like. But still, I was like, they've only known each other for that long and I feel this much for them? That is insta-lust done right. And the spice in this one was absolutely fantastic because these two just have so much chemistry together. There were so many spicy scenes that I just loved so much. Like, their chemistry together was just off the charts good. This book does have twists, and during one specific twist, I'm sure if you've read this book, you know the one I'm talking about, but when I got to that moment, my jaw was literally on the floor. I was like, oh my freaking god. I don't think a twist has blown me away that much in a really long time. I loved how everything came together in the end. My only one issue I have with this book is that I felt like after the twist happened, the resolution felt very rushed, and the solution to the conflict was a little too convenient. I think this book could have benefited from being longer because of that, but I still just can't find it in my heart to give this book any less than 5 stars, just because I'm still thinking about it to this day. It's been like 2 weeks after I've read this, and I'm still thinking about everything that happened in this book. All of these characters touched me so much. The romance, I just felt for this romance so much. I love these two together. There's just so much to love about this book that the one gripe that I have with it isn't enough to lower my rating to less than a 5 star. This is going to be one of the best books I've read this year. If you have not read it yet, please do. I will be reading Enchantra, the second book. I have ordered it from Book of the Month, which is on its way to me right now. So like the moment I get my hands on it, the moment that it arrives on my doorstep, I probably will be reading it because I am so excited for it. Okay, y'all. It is rant time. Let's rant. Let's rant about the worst book that I read this month, and probably one of the worst books that I will have read this year, which should come as no surprise because this book is very, very, very infamous online. And so, like, it's not that surprising that I didn't like it. That book is Icebreaker. The infamous Icebreaker. Oh my god, we're gonna have a ball talking about this one. So before I picked up this book, my expectations were so low. Like, they were on the ground low just because of what I've heard about this book and that it has so many negative reviews, so many people don't like it. But because it was so infamous online, I was curious to pick it up. So I still did because I just wanted to know why people dislike this book so much. And so the fact that my expectations were already so low, and the fact that I still hated this book as much as I did, speaks to how bad this book actually is. Like, my expectations were already low, and yet the book still made me so freaking angry. Like, that says a lot. So in this, we're following Anastasia, who is a figure skater, and Nate, who is a hockey player. And after the hockey rink gets destroyed, the hockey players have to share the rink with the ice skater, which makes Anastasia target Nate for whatever reason. But Nate is instantly attracted to Anastasia and tries to win her over, and eventually they have a relationship. That's like the basic premise of this one. So the number one reason why I hated this book was because of Anastasia. This girl is such a bit. And yes, she is a brat because of her mental health, which is explained. But there was just nothing that made her likable in the beginning, and it's that reason why her character flopped for me. She treats Nate like absolute shit at the start because she's so pissed that she has to share a rink with the hockey team. So she takes her anger out on Nate when it isn't even his fault that the hockey rink got destroyed and they have to share a rink together. And what makes this so much worse is that every single character absolutely loves Anastasia and talks about how great she is, when all I've seen is her being an absolute brat. And so it just doesn't compute why every single character loves her so much and thinks she's so freaking nice. I'm like, where's the nice? I'm not seeing a nice. All I see is her being an absolute bitch to everyone, and it makes no sense. Nate is also someone who sees Anastasia as the best thing since like sliced bread, even though she treats him like crap, and it pissed me the fuck off. I cannot freaking stand when nice male characters fall for girls who are mean to him, and this goes the other way around. I also can't stand when nice girls fall for like bad boys. Like, that's also irritating. But I put myself in the situation that these two characters are in, and if I saw such a nice guy like Nate falling in love with a bitch like Anastasia, and if I was someone who like had like the biggest crush on Nate, that would make me feel like absolute crap. Like, if I was a character or someone who like had like great morals and was super nice, and I saw another nice guy falling for a bitchy girl, like, that would piss me the fuck off. And that's what made me so freaking mad when it came to Nate, because he's such a great guy. He's so freaking nice, and he gives all of his time and energy to a girl who, for one, initially doesn't want anything to do for him, and for two, treats him like crap, which he doesn't deserve. Like, why was he falling for her? And what makes it even worse, if you can believe it, is that Nate was infatuated with Anastasia after having like one conversation with her, where that first conversation and interaction with him, she was being so mean to him. So I could not understand why the next time he saw her, he just wanted her so badly. It makes no freaking sense. And in the scene where it's the second time that he's seen her, he sees her laughing, and he thinks to himself what he would give to hear her laugh again. And I'm like, sir, you've only had one interaction with her, and that one interaction didn't go well between you two. So why are you like, oh, I would give anything to make her laugh and hear her laugh again? Like, what the freak are you talking about? Oh my god. It just makes for really poor writing. Like, the foundation of their relationship and romance made absolutely no sense. And it's for that reason that I never cared about their relationship at all. And the spice in this book, the spice was ridiculous. It was so freaking stupid. For one, they hook up by like page 50, so there was absolutely no build up to the spice, which is a pet peeve of mine, because how am I supposed to feel anything for them fucking each other when there's like no build up to the relationship at all? They're not yearning for each other, so why would I care that they're being intimate with each other so soon? And there's this one scene between them where they are in the back of an Uber, and he's going down on her, and all of their friends are in the car, and it was just so unrealistic. You cannot tell me that not one single person in that car noticed what they were doing in the back seat. That would just never happen in real life. And another thing that I just thought about, how disrespectful is it to have sex in the back of an Uber? Like, an Uber, you're at a place of business. This is someone's business, and you're like disgracing the back of their car. Like, what is wrong with you? I just thought about that as well. Like, that is so wrong. Oh my god, that is so wrong. And speaking of unrealistic, this is another thing that bothered me. I'm nitpicking so much, but this bothered me so much. So Anastasia was constantly not wearing any underwear under her dresses, and I could let this slide if she was wearing like a maxi dress, like a long dress. But in two different scenes, she's not wearing underwear under very short dresses, like dresses that go to like mid-thigh. And I could not understand the physics of that, because if she were to like make one, like the slightest downward movement, she would be bearing it all to everyone. Like, the girl could only be able to stand up completely straight in order to not expose herself in front of everyone. And so how is it possible for her to be not wearing any panties under her dresses? It made no freaking sense. It bothered me so much. And the pacing of this was horrid. I almost DNF'd this, and I should have. I just wanted to read this all the way through because I was still so curious on what else was going to happen that makes so many people hate this book. So I stuck it out, and I just pushed through it, and really I should have DNF'd it, because nothing in the latter half of this book, nothing happened. 100 pages of this book should have been cut out. There were so many scenes that were not necessary. I was interested to see what the like third act conflict was going to be, and it's like there barely was any third act conflict. The conflict was so mundane and anticlimactic that it was not were sludging through like so many slow scenes to get to the conflict because there was just no payoff. I really shouldn't have bothered finishing this one. I do gotta say that I did skim read the last 100 pages. Basically, during the last about 100 pages, I only read the dialogue because I just could not be bothered anymore. I did not care what was happening, and I completely skipped over the last 2 spy scenes because I could care less what happened between Anastasia and Nate. I could care less. I could not be bothered. And the reason why I gave this book 2 stars instead of 1 star, I could have easily given it 1 star, but I did find Nate's character tolerable. I thought, he's a nice guy, like I'll give him that. And at least Anastasia's backstory explains her horrid behavior, but everything else about this book sucked. The characters sucked. The characters were so immature. The pacing sucked. The romance sucked. So many things sucked. I would not recommend this book. Like, even if you're curious, like, just don't read it. It's not worth your time. Skip over this. It's hated for a reason. I do gotta say, I think Hannah Grace has potential. I think she does. And for that reason, I'm thinking about picking up the second book in this series at least. But the rest of the books in the series don't have the best ratings either, so I don't even know if I should even bother. If you have read the rest of this series, please tell me how the other 2 books are, because I'm still debating if I should pick them up. But yeah, this book was terrible. Definitely one of the worst books that I've read this year so far. So after the disappointment that was Icebreaker, I was feeling very, very, very slumpy. And it's for that reason that I thought it might be a good idea to pick up a book that I have read before that I really enjoyed, because that might help me get out of this very brief slump that I was in. And so I did indeed decide to pick up a book that I have read before that I remember really liking and that I hadn't read in a while, and that is The Wicked Deep by Shay Earnshaw. And I specifically chose this book to pick up because after reading Phantasma, I was still in a really big, like, spooky reading mood, and I remember this book giving such spooky, creepy vibes, so I thought it was the perfect book to pick up because it was something that I was in the mood for. So let's go into what this one is about. This one is actually a young adult book. I think this is oh no, I read the Hunger Games. Read the 2 newest Hunger Games books. I was almost going to say I think this is the only YA book I picked up this month, but I was definitely in the mood to also pick up a young adult book because after how horrible these spicy scenes were in this book, I was like, I don't want to read a book that has any spicy scenes in it. I just want to read something like young adult that just has no spice. And so in this one, we're following Penny, who lives in the small town of Sparrow. And this town is a tourist location because it is rumored that 3 sisters who were drowned in the ocean for being accused of being witches possessed the bodies of 3 local girls in order to lure boys into the ocean and drown them. And they do this in order to get revenge on the town that turned against them and sentenced them to death. Penny runs into a boy named Bo, who is a traveler, having ended up in Sparrow for reasons that he keeps secret from her. And regarding the plot, that is all I'm going to say, because this is a book that you have to go into only knowing the basic premise of it, because pretty much the entirety of this book is just one big whole spoiler. So this is going to be a hard one for me to talk about because of that. The first time I read this book, I actually gave it 4 stars, and I think I can remember it's because I wasn't completely invested in the romance as much as I wanted to be, but on reread, I have felt for this romance way more than I did the first time I read it. And along with that, I just loved everything about this book. So I actually changed my 4-star to a 5-star. I love the spooky atmosphere of this book. Shay Earnshaw puts you in a location and describes settings so clearly, and I could so vividly picture this town. I loved how there were flashbacks of the sisters in the 1800s before they were drowned. So we got glimpses of their life that made them feel so much more real. And this book has a huge twist in it that I believe I didn't catch on to the twist when I first read this book, but it made it super interesting to read upon reread it, knowing exactly what was happening. And rereading this made me realize how obvious the twist was. It's hardly a twist because it is so flippin' obvious. I wish I could talk about it more, but I will refrain because although it's obvious, if you do choose to pick up this book, I want to leave it so that you can experience it for yourself. So I won't say anything. But what makes this book so fascinating is that this twist encompasses the entire story. And if you do not pick up on it, everything that you have read will feel like a lie. So again, I didn't connect completely to the romance when I first read it, but I did really love this romance upon reread, which I was glad that I loved it so much more this time around. And I'm wondering, now knowing what the twist was, that might have been a factor on why I love the romance so much more. But I loved how innocent and sweet Penny and Beau's relationship is. They connect based on the fact that they both feel so ostracized from the town because they are both very different individuals. And so in that way, they could understand each other, and it made their relationship so freaking sweet. So yeah, this is an older book. I believe it came out in 2018, but if you have not read it yet, I would recommend to pick it up. It's a very whimsical book. It has spooky vibes. If you love witches, you'll love this one. And I'm glad to say I loved it even more upon reread. It is now a 5-star book. Okay, lastly, the last book I'm going to talk about, I'm barely going to talk about this book because there's just not much to say. It was a vibe. It was interesting. It was something. That was Unhinged. I believe this is by Vera Valentine. I don't even know what to say about this one. The reason I picked this one up is because I've been seeing it on the Facebook groups that I'm in, and I've been seeing it a lot. So I was like, I'm curious about that. Let me pick it up. All I'm going to say is that this one, it's a romance. It's a romance between a woman and her door. And her front door becomes alive at one point and becomes a man. And they grow feelings for each other, but she was doing stuff with him while he was a door. Yeah, it's an odd one. It's a weird one. But I mean, it was a vibe. I enjoyed it. You know what? It was different. That's probably why I enjoyed it so much. It's something that I have never read before. So I found it pretty interesting. And the characters weren't bad. I thought the door guy, was really, really sweet. So I actually really liked him. It's not the best romance ever, given how short this book is. This book is only 70 pages. It's pretty much, I think that counts as like a novella. So it's very short. So it's like kind of hard to like feel for the romance because it's very brief. But I mean, it was interesting. Yeah, that's all I got to say about that one. So I give it 4 out of 5 stars. You know what? It was an experience. I'll give it that. All right, so that's all the books that I read this month. I have been filming for almost 2 hours, so this is going to be a long ass video. But I hope you guys enjoyed hearing all my thoughts about the books that I read this month. Let me know if you've read any of these books. I would love to know. I would love to know your thoughts on any of these ones, especially because I read a lot of great books this month and I want to talk about them all more. I'll be posting my TBR for May either tomorrow or very, very soon in the days to come. So that will be coming out soon. So hopefully I will see you then. Bye.